So the next question is, Scott, what was your favorite induction, not just for smoking, but for general problems as well? Do you have any advice? So what was my favorite? Oh, what was my favorite induction? Okay. So I think I've talked about this before. I didn't have a specific favorite therapy induction where it would be like a, is it like the close the eyes type technique? Is it like walk down the stairs technique? Is it like the instant induction, anything like that? I never really got into that stuff because I found it just didn't work with the way that I did things. It didn't work with my resistant clients as well. We just did a video about resistant clients. So what I'd like to do is I like to actually do, it's quite funny. I like to actually do the induction itself, which is bypassing the conscious mind into more trance states. I like to use the therapy and the induction at the same time. Now, what do I mean by this? It's sort of like, we know as therapists and coaches that our clients' problem exists unconsciously. That's why they can't solve it. That's why they hire you and me to help them solve it. So the very art of asking your client about the problem they're experiencing, so finding the symptoms, finding the root cause, finding the parameters, the whats, the whens, the whos, the whys, but asking your client questions about their problem, which every therapist should do. This should be the initial start of any sort of intervention to find out what the problem actually is. In order for your client to explain what the problem is, which is unconscious, they have to go into their unconscious, thus trance, to retrieve that information. So think of what we're doing here. By asking a client about their problem and finding out the very minute details and finding the root cause and what's really going on, whether it's like 10 questions or 20 questions, whatever it is, they're having to go into trance each time, retrieve the information, come out and tell us the information. Then they have to go back in because they're answering our second question. They come out, they go in, they're out. This is almost like a fractionation approach. So what would happen in this case is, let's say, for example, I'm working with my lawyers, I'm asking about the smoking, asking the whats, the whos, the whens, the whys. By about the fifth, sixth, maybe seventh question, I could start to see the trance developing. So just the very fact of asking about the problem, because I need to know what is the real root cause. The smoking is the symptom, the anxiety is the symptom. I need to know what's going on because I need to know what needs to be fixed. So the very art of actually asking about the problem to get more information, to be really clear about what the information is or what the problem is, that would actually start to go into trance. And after a little while of doing this, there was no consciousness left. It came to a point where I'd ask them a question and they'd be so tranced out, whether their eyes are open or closed, it doesn't really matter. Well, they couldn't actually ask me anything. They couldn't actually answer me anything. It's like they had no words left. There was no conscious understanding about what was going on. And this is another cool way to get past resistance and stuff like that. So I was actually doing I guess we could do three things at once. We're doing the investigation phase. I'm doing the induction into trance, which is just bypassing the conscious mind. And I'm actually starting the therapy. What a lot of people don't realize is sometimes therapy can be enough when your client consciously, to an extent, understands the problem at a deep level. Sometimes insight to the real problem is enough for that problem to completely erode, okay, to be completely snapped, to be completely like broken. So the very fact of your client understanding about their problem, plus going to trance, plus finding out parameters of their problem, you're doing the therapy at the same time. So that was really my induction. I never really understood why people would separate different parts of the whole intervention. Like they'd say, Scott, I've got to do the rapport first, then I do the suggestibility test, then I do the relaxation, then I ask them about the problem, then I do the therapy. If you're sticking to that rigid routine, that's a very surefire way to have resistance because your client can almost follow what's going on. If they've been to another therapist before and they see you doing the same thing as well, that's going to cause some issues as well. So by doing all three things at once, it's sort of like you catch your client so unaware that before they actually, quote unquote, go so deep into this trance to find the new insights and get the root cause and what the real problem is and understand the new things about it, the trance is already developing. It's caught them unaware, so they can't resist it. Plus, it's like they're going into trance having already solved their problem as well. So if you've watched any of the demos that we've done, it gets very hard to see where I'm demarcating between each different part of the intervention. And the reason it's impossible to see is because I'm not doing that. It's sort of an amalgamation of everything together: the trance, the therapy, the breakthrough, the getting past the resistance, the deepening, all of that stuff's happening at once, but it all starts with it all starts with finding out the parameters of the problem. And by asking the client about their problem, they have to retrieve the information that's unconscious. The more you ask about the problem, the deeper in trance they're going to go, the quicker that aha moment or that insight from what the problem really is and the solution they find is going to come quicker. So it's just a real speed training way to take your clients into the breakthrough. So hopefully that answers your question. I think it was about my favorite induction. And I use this for smokers, realizing again, smoking is just the symptom. I pretty much use it for everything. Like, we know a client comes in to see us as a smoker and they say, I want to quit. But I'm working with everything from, childhood trauma. I had rape victims. I had anxiety victims. I had pain, all of those sorts of things you can imagine as being the real root cause to why they came in. Being smoking was just the way they dealt with the problem as the symptom itself. So regardless of the problem, I don't want people to think, well, that's a good thing to use just for smokers, Scott, but I work with anxiety. How can this work? It's all the same thing. When you stop the mindset or stop the conclusion that there is a certain particular technique for a certain particular problem, and that technique should only be used for that problem, that's the key word here, should, you cause yourself a lot of rigidness in the way that you do therapy. You're going to cause yourself a lot of resistance with your clients. But also now you're not being flexible as a therapist or a coach. You're not able to go along with what your client's presenting to you because you're trying to apply a typical technique to a problem that is really just the symptom they've told you. And you've been taught to deal with that symptom with a certain technique. But when that technique doesn't work and it doesn't be applied to every single client that comes in, now you're sort of caught in a rock between a rock and a hard place. So if you guys want to see that in action, just go through the YouTube channel. You'll see some conversation or more advanced conversation hypnotherapy demonstration breakdowns. They're from our 2-day live training. You'll see what I mean about investigating the problem, creating the trance, doing the induction at the same time, the therapy, and doing all those things together. You'll see an amalgamation of everything at once, but that's why you'll see really, really quick breakthroughs. So that was a really long way for me to tell you what my favorite induction is. That would be it, to actually use the problem as the induction, as the trance, as the therapy, instead of more the classical and traditional ways. Hopefully that answers your question.